Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Heretic Hammer Podcast. I am your host, Marshall, and this is my co-host, Dylan.
Hello, hello.
And, oh boy. All right, we gotta, Dylan, are you a fan of the turducken?
The turducken?
Yeah.
You know, I love the name. I've never tasted it myself.
I would say made famous by the John Madden himself.
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's cool, but I think it's cool from a distance, as I've never personally tried it.
Speaking of
Why do you ask?
Well, I was gonna say, speaking of my Moonbase Alpha reference, do you Yeah, I was gonna say, every time that we watch Zeta, and we heard the term Ayug, I'd always just think,
yeah.
Ayug. Now, let's see, what would a turducken and Gundam have in common? Oh wait, Dylan, it's because this episode is a turducken of an episode. But of what, Dylan? It
kind of is, yeah. Well, here's the thing. Y'all, I'm afraid it's time once again for another episode of Mobile Suit Gundam, Dylan's Counterattack.
Came in real quick this time.
There's so much we have to cover. I gotta come in quick. But actually, you know what? You're right. We're going too fast. We gotta slow things down. I can't forget what matters most.
The slow-mo guys.
No.
Oh.
What matters most is that this is a very important episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's a celebration, if you will.
Yes.
And we gotta celebrate. We gotta sing.
Gotta sing.
Happy birthday, Gundam.
Oh my god.
Happy birthday, Gundam.
Oh my goodness.
Happy birthday, dear Gundam. Happy birthday to you. Okay, but not actually.
Hear me out. Wasn't it like a month ago?
Hear me out. It's kind of not, but but we're pretending like it's starting to be. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, great. So here's what happened, y'all. Before this episode was recorded, and
far
Gundam
before this episode airs,
the Gundam conference for the spring of 2026 was aired at like 4:00 in the morning our time.
Woohoo.
I woke up to watch it. I shouldn't have. We literally had a conversation before where we were like, it's a bad idea to stay up for this.
No, probably not.
Yeah. And then I did it anyways because I have a problem.
I feel like this show has only enabled that problem.
It's about like 46 minutes or so. And it was hosted by a radio personality, Hisanori Yoshida, as well as Sally Amaki, who's a voice actress. And there was a bunch of stuff announced, but it wasn't like a bunch of like crazy jaw-dropping stuff. But I still wanted to like address it and kind of run through some of the things that got announced there and got shown. The
this
first
was not
thing
the
I wanted
E3 of Gundam.
No, definitely not.
Much as I wished it was.
There's no Jeff Keighley to be seen, and no Mountain Dew. The interesting thing I think to take away from this is that they are building up towards the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
Even though that is not going to be happening for a couple more years.
What was it? 29?
Because remember, 1979 was the original.
Yeah.
Mobile Suit Gundam. So yeah, it'd be 29. But they're clearly not worried about that. And they're like, nope, that's fine. We're just going to start with our 50th anniversary celebration whenever we want. We're not concerned.
This is a build up.
So part of that was a animation they debuted kind of like a music video,
Yeah.
but it was just this animation, really well made. That was a celebration of all of Gundam. But not only that, it seemed to really be aimed at the people that had grown up with Gundam. And it starred this main character who like was watching the walking Gundam statue, and was kind of looking around at like all the people of various ages that were watching it with him. And he kind of flashbacks to being a kid and like growing up with Gundam in various ways. And then also it has this moment where it's kind of showing off all these different mobile suits and Gundam pilots from all the various series throughout the years.
Yes.
And it's very flashy, very colorful, very well made.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about it?
I cried.
Hell yeah. My
um,
man.
like, look, my reaction video will be up. No. Soletta, let's go. I definitely didn't cry during this. Definitely not. Look, don't blame me. Whenever it gets to parent stuff, it gets me. Why am I crying, dude? But so here's the thing about that animation is that the thing that that it does. So at the beginning, he's looking around, and it's specifically when he looks over to this little girl on the shoulders of her dad, and she's in like her mouth is agape. She's in awe, looking at the robotic 78.
Mhm.
Then it's in the animation that you end up seeing and realizing, because you watch him, grow up watching it, watch it with his son, and then you find out he's looking at his daughter, or his granddaughter, sorry, his granddaughter, and that's his son who is the dad. And it's this shared generation of enjoying Gundam, and you see them as three kids almost walking through it together. And that shit gets to me.
Yeah.
That shit gets to me. I talk about it in the video, but because like I grew up with so many like traditions and things that, you know, I did with my dad, and then I want to do with my kids. And so it was just like, I'm just like, ah, shit. I was like, oh no.
I definitely, yeah, a major theme of this was kind of the generational handing down of uh Gundam as this thing to be celebrated, yes, as a product to be consumed, but also as like a community to be taking part in.
Absolutely.
Something with the unveiling of like a 50th anniversary logo was that they also revealed that the like slogan that was going to be used for celebrating the 50th anniversary was your first starts here,
Yeah.
which I think is a very interesting choice because they're clearly trying to bring in newer people, not just like do things that are going to be appealing to the people that are already into Gundam,
Yeah.
but also trying to get more and more newer people to be interested in Gundam as well.
Well,
Um,
and a 50th anniversary is really good for, I think, this in a way like a refresh time. Like, it's been around for 50 years, and
yes,
so like this is your moment to really kind of let yourself, obviously you don't want to completely like restart from scratch, but like to kind of look back and say, hey, this is the good time to reinvent not ourselves, but like the way that maybe we look at everything, and find a way to then get more people involved.
yeah. How did you feel about not knowing like half of the characters that got shown in this animation?
It was cool nonetheless. I knew
Mhm.
of a number of them, like like roughly like the shows that they kind of come from, you know, but it starts at least somewhat simpler because it starts, we get we get why am I Machu?
Mhm. Yeah, Machu. Yep.
Soletta. Yeah, I know of Hathaway. Obviously, I know the movie's been coming out. Slash, he was technically already in a
Yep.
movie.
The trilogy with the second film that's just
Yeah.
coming out. Yep.
But and then I know of the guy from the guy from
But you know
Iron
Amuro, you
Blooded
know Camille, you
Orphans.
know,
Well, and
yep,
I know
the lead
of
character by
yeah, I
BO.
know of the Iron Blooded Orphans, like Gundam in character, just like from face wise. I've seen Unicorn before, but like, yeah, like I'm like, I don't know the name of the guy for Double O, and but it's like, oh, here and then like, and yeah, like some of the extra ones, I'm like, who, what?
Yeah, but it sounds like the emotional thread still carried through even without having that recognition of all those characters.
Yeah, well, because that wasn't obviously the emotional thread that I specifically attached to, It wasn't
Mhm.
watching the characters that broke me. It was watching the three of them as kids walk together, into the
Yeah.
the color of light and then, we got to see all the cool Gundam.
Mhm. So yeah, it was a really cool animation. Um, and in addition to that, there were other announcements that they made. They had already previously established that there was going to be a collaboration between Gundam and Hololive, the idol group.
Yeah.
Um, and in this presentation, they actually showed off some of the specific mobile suit units, the custom made mobile suits that are themed after I believe it is 5 members of the Hololive group. I can't recall if there's more members of the group that are going to be getting
Well,
uh,
yeah, so
mobile suits as well.
maybe to help specify this, what they had announced was actually that these are 5 more. The ones that they
Yes,
specifically
yes.
showed here
Okay.
is these are 5 more. Um, because like Mora Calliope wasn't part of the original announcement, but she is
Mhm.
now. And
Yeah.
that was especially kind of a rarity because I think she might be I'm not a Hololive guy. I'm sorry. I'm not a Hololive guy. I don't know many of them. But like I think she was like one of the only a few that are part of Hololive English, a part of this collab.
I think so. She is definitely the most prominent like EN
Yeah,
Hololive VTuber that I am aware of
right. And that's
because I'm
always
also
where it's
not
tough because
into Hololive much.
yeah, Hololive, I mean, it's really funny. Timing wise, this was really funny. Because this was announced as she was getting into essentially a fight with Hololive management. But that's the benefit, right? She's prominent enough where she can get leverage. So good on her.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially, because like one of her complaints was, I guess, that like they don't really give as much of a shit supposedly about Hololive English, and it's like, well, giving if she is the only Hololive N VTuber on this collab, that would kind of placate to that belief, now wouldn't it?
Mhm.
But yes, that
Well,
I
for what
believe
it's
is the
worth
case.
though,
So
it like I said, they showed off like 5 more of these collaboration characters, mobile suits. And I definitely thinking about that just means that the showed collaboration is right around the corner any day now. But also, moving right along, they also announced. Speaking of the original series, Mobile Suit, that obviously would be celebrating its 50th anniversary as well. They are going to be doing a remaster project for 0079. And that's all we know.
yes,
We do
that's
not
all
know
we
the
know.
full extent of how it's going to be remastered. We don't know anything, details of what that will fully consist of. We just know that they are planning to remaster 0079 as part of the 50th anniversary. There's a similar thing going on with Wing, where there's going to be some sort of a new visual project associated with Gundam Wing.
Yes.
But again, no real details on it, what it's going to consist of.
The only thing that they confirmed is that it will be in some regard, it will be a longer form content piece. So it will be either some type of series or movie. Basically, they were essentially just confirming that it's not going to be like a minute, like a 90-second or like 10-minute video. That was basically the only thing that they were confirming, was that it's just not going to be a short video. But it could be one episode for all we know.
Mm-hmm. It could also be like the announced Seed Freedom Zero, which is going to be, it will have a theatrical run. We have no idea what the release date will be. And my understanding is that it is a midquel, because it is a prequel to Seed Freedom, but would take place after Seed and Seed Destiny. I have basically nothing else to say on that one because I actually haven't watched anything related to Seed Freedom.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't
for
hit
the people
that point
who
yet,
love it.
so.
That's great, but yeah, I got nothing for you.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was pretty significant is that the life-size unicorn statue that is at Dive City, Tokyo, is going to be taken down in August. It will be removed. It has been there for several years. I personally never got to see it when I was in Tokyo back in 2014. It was still the RX-78-2 that was there. And then afterwards, I think a couple years later, they removed the RX-78, replaced it with the unicorn, and the unicorn has been there ever since. But now that is also being removed. So the question becomes, what will it be replaced with? My vote is for that'd be pretty crazy. My vote is for a Haro that is the size of like a hot air balloon.
That'd be funny.
I think that'd be cool.
I mean, I only say G-Quirks honestly just because it's the newest Gundam to come out, but arguably you also could say they could just put Hathaway's Gundam in there as well.
It's that there's like so many potential things that it could be.
I mean, I don't know how old Unicorn was in, I think it was 2018, 17 or 18. So,
yeah. There is a Hollywood adaptation of Mobile Suit Gundam that is currently shooting in Australia. So we know it will probably have a colony drop involved.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because they did say there will be mobile suits you know of and ones you don't. So it does maybe feel like that they are adapting. They're taking the adapting route. And so my feeling is probably it's going to be, I mean, I feel like they would potentially have to make it something like in 0079 from that point, right? Like,
yes, but the casting that has happened so far has suggested that like maybe not necessarily using the same characters.
Yeah.
It strikes me as like an Uwe Boll type situation where they might grab elements from 79, but otherwise kind of tell their own original story.
Yeah, and those are funky. Those are always really hard to do.
Yeah, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, it was otherwise pretty chill. There's going to be apparently Gundam conventions coming around parts of the world.
Yes, it's going to start in Japan next year.
Yeah, but then all the other dates next year, especially like or starting from next year, are going to be announced as time goes on. So there wasn't any like type of one last thing really. It was just kind of ended at the con, I think, right?
Yeah, the next Gundam conference that is going to happen will be in the winter. There's going to be festivals going on across Japan. They mentioned a landmark project, but it was another one where they didn't really give any details on it.
Yeah.
There is an exhibition specifically for Tomino's artistic works that is going to be held at the Tokyo National Museum. And April 7th is now officially Gundam Day, according to the Japanese Anniversary Registry.
Yes, that was very cute.
Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, that pretty much wrapped it up. It was a lot of stuff being announced sort of for Japan, which makes sense. But yeah, that was kind of the gist of it. You know, kind of cool stuff going on there, but also a lot of wait and sees when it comes to the announcements that were being made. So with all that said, what is this now? Is this the duck portion that we're getting to of the episode?
The duck
Because
portion.
if it's a turducken, we're in the middle, right? We're in the duck part.
True. I guess that maybe it was a misnomer to put it 3 layers, because it's really 2. There is not a Warhammer thing I need to shoehorn in here. So, you know, but in a way
we can mention we'll mention Henry Cavill was filming on a set, and some fans came over and had him sign a box of Custodes.
Yeah, that was
super
very funny.
jazzed about it.
That was a very funny. That was a great image. I love that.
He was like hyped.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that for him.
Pretty good stuff.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Marshall, I think the main meat of what we're here to talk about today,
yes,
is we have once again watched another Mobile Suit Gundam series, and this is one that we've been talking about addressing for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the big day is here. It's finally time. It's time for our second celebration of the day. Is everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday, Elon. Happy birthday, Eric. Happy birthday, Suletta. Happy birthday. Corporation sucks. Today we are talking about The Witch from Mercury.
Woo! Yes.
Blow out your candles, harvest your tomatoes, and make a wish.
And hope you aren't vaporized into the data storm.
It's finally time. We have been threatening to do this for a while.
Yes.
And the time is now. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk The Witch from Mercury. This is a series that was released in Japan in 2022. I have spoken fairly highly of it in the past, but I also had not watched it in full since its original English airing in 2023, which included the prologue. There's 24 episodes and then a prologue.
Yes.
And Marshall, for you, this was your first time seeing The Witch from Mercury.
Yes, which I mean, this is not a new case. I never watched Zeta before. You know, obviously G-Quux was just coming out when we watched that, so like that was fresh. But this I heard plenty of, because it was very well seemingly liked by the community as far as I could tell. Even just when we first dabbled into it and I started getting, you know, like Gundam memes on my Instagram reels, and you know, like stuff just showing up on my feed on, you know, on YouTube. Like, this was a series that I saw that people were like peak, you know, and I would never know until now.
Yeah, it is. I think that's a pretty fair assumption to make about its popularity. It is definitely, to this day, still kind of regarded. I say to this day, it only came out a few years ago, but
well, you know,
it's a fairly highly regarded series for Gundam. Definitely has a lot of its fans, including myself. And I was very excited for us to finally jump into it and for me to revisit it, because again, I had last seen it, during its initial run. Um, and I got to be honest with you, uh, my takeaways from this series, having rewatched it, uh, were definitely different from the first time I had seen it.
Mhm.
And I think a big part of that was the difference between watching the series on like a week by week basis versus watching a lot of it within the span of like a couple weeks.
Right.
Um,
I think
because
that
this
might be,
series,
yeah.
and we're gonna hop right into just full on, we're gonna talk about it. So we're gonna be discussing, spoilers as we do. Um, but this is a series that is 24 episodes with the prologue, and I had somehow like either forgotten or repressed how much is crammed into this series
Oh, yeah.
in terms of characters, in terms of mobile suits, in terms of plot, in terms of interconnecting threads. Um, there is so much happening at any given time that it threw me for a loop. And like the things that I remembered were still there, but there was so much about it that I had just like locked away in the recesses of my brain. Um, and coming to terms with this time around left my head spinning of like, wow, this is insanely complex. And I would argue it might be a fair bit more complicated than it needs to be in order to tell the story that it's trying to tell. Um,
Valid.
my quick takeaway though would be that I still greatly enjoyed it. I still think it's up in the higher ends there in terms of Mobile Suit Gundam series go.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, definitely kind of threw me for a loop having revisited it. Uh, where do you think we should begin in our discussion of The Witch from Mercury?
I think let's just quickly give a very brief kind of recap on the prologue first, because it
Sure.
just set the scene essentially what the universe is like. Because this is, this is a new universe, new timeline.
Correct. We are now in Ad Stella. It is a
Mhm.
completely alternate timeline to the Universal Century that we are familiar with. And specifically, we begin in Ad Stella 89, if I remember correctly.
I think
Um,
so. That part
but
I don't remember.
but the kind of the big thing that is kind of getting established with this prologue, which right away I feel like sets the tone for the series as a whole, because the prologue itself is like around a half an hour,
Yeah.
but there is enough jammed into this thing to fit like a 2-hour feature film. Um, it
Yeah.
is just like nonstop hitting you with new information, new terminology, things that you got to remember. And unfortunately, it does play a pretty big part in the main series, especially when you get near to the end there. I shudder to think if anyone had watched Witch from Mercury and somehow didn't watch the prologue as well,
Mhm.
and how like utterly confused you would be by a lot of what's getting thrown around. Um, but to kind of keep it basic, the main thing to know is that you have uh these fronts, which are these like structures that are built inside of asteroids. And there is a mobile suit Gundam, Elfrith, that is being constructed by the Vanadis Institute.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a test pilot by the name of Elnora Samaya. Uh, she is trying to sort of test the limits of the connection between like the pilot and the mobile suit. There is like a permit connection essentially that is used to measure the amount of like strain that is being put on the pilot as they are using the Gundam. Um, and most people haven't been able to get past like a certain level of that connection before it seriously causes damage to their health. Um, And I think the big takeaway from this is that Elnora learns that uh while she is unable to reach it's like layer 33 they're trying to get to, uh her daughter, Eric, uh ends up in the cockpit of the Gundam like you do, and manages to establish a connection with the Gundam that allows her to surpass layer 32 and get to layer 33. Um, there is so much happening with the actual company itself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the reasons for like the Elfrith being developed. Uh, but the big thing that happens is that uh
Corporate bullshit gets in the way.
a lot of corporate bullshit goes down, and this results in deaths. uh Alora and Eric manage to escape, but her husband actually dies.
Mm-hmm.
Elnora, sorry. But her husband ends up dying, but not before he sings Happy Birthday, which
Yeah.
becomes like a major recurring theme throughout this series, is the concept of birthdays. And the two of them escape, but there is this sort of declaration made
Yeah.
to limit and get rid of Gundams. They are being deemed as too dangerous to use, and those that pilot the Gundams are referred to as witches in what could very easily be described as a sort of witch hunt. Uh,
Yes.
in like finding them and like being like, nope, you're not allowed to do this anymore. This is now effectively outlawed. Um, and that's kind of the main thing to take away
Yeah.
from the
Well,
prologue. It's
and the
tough because I don't want to get too into all
no, the
the
I
specifics, but there's
yeah.
so much happening.
The biggest thing to take away from this though is one of the biggest things you learn is obviously like that this show is clearly going to be touching on kind of the corporate hypocrisy, right? Like because
Yes.
let's be front about the reality. They create this, there is this inherent like concern and question about this gun to format, which is used
Yes.
generally to enhance people so that they can live in space because they're noticing that living in space is causing negative effects on people's lives, limbs, whatever, and that there is a way, they believe that there is a way to use this to enhance themselves and make it so that they can live better in space. The problem that we run into obviously though is that because we hit corporate hypocrisy. They're supposedly claiming that this company is building these Gundams that could become weapons of mass destruction. So instead, to deal with that, they kill everybody in order to do so. like,
Yes.
like because committing genocide is the way to prevent a weapon from mass destruction. Clearly, like that's definitely never been historically proven before. That's
and
never been used
the
as an
name
excuse.
and the name itself, Gundam, in this context is coming from the sort of the Gund arm system
Yes.
that is being developed from the Gund technologies,
Mhm.
of course, for military applications, despite the fact that like the original gun format was like being developed for like biotechnology and like health benefits, which is also a recurring thread throughout this series is like a lot of like the applications of technology for military use versus like medical use, and that the usage of that as like a bargaining chip or as like a negotiation platform
Mhm.
for accruing funding and like
Yeah.
permissions to be able to operate as like companies Um, and right off the bat, like there's so much happening that is like corporation centered with this series. Um, and the idea with the permits that I mentioned before is that it's the permit itself, it's like an element that has a bunch of uses. Like
Yeah.
we're obviously talking about it in the context of it being used with the Gundam with the establishing of the connection between like the Gundam and the pilot, but permit is actually being used in like a bunch of different technologies throughout um the sort of the space colony society that exists.
Mhm.
Uh and that is something that also comes back later in a big way is like this isn't just being used in relation to these mobile suits, it's being used in technology all over.
Yeah. That being said, so yeah, unfortunately, we kind of see the company, like, I mean, we see their massacre. We see, um, Elnora kind of end up being the only one to escape, with Eri, and it cuts from there that we get to uh the actual segment, or the actual beginning of Witch for Mercury.
Hmm.
Um, Now, Um, I think in lieu, because we mentioned before we started recording this, that there's a lot to inherently potentially cover with this series. Um, there's just a whole heck of a lot going on, and so in lieu of doing a normal, like, hey, let's do, or here's like a summary, here's our summary section of the show, and then we'll talk about this and that. There was I had an interesting, we'll say, like, trail through this series. um and we talked about this before, and this was kind of being I've alluded to it coming into this. So I felt like maybe one of the early things that we could do in this episode was kind of, before beginning the larger discussion, to maybe kind of get into a little bit of my perspective uh through the show.
Yes.
Um Now I want to make this very clear from the jump. I kind of mentioned this at the end of last week's episode. That I think both of us, but generally I do a very good job. I feel like I'm not just kind of, quote unquote, like, falling in line with the general view whenever we watch a show, right? Any of
Hmm.
these Gundam shows. For my part, I like Seed, and I'm not very big on Char's counterattack, which is not necessarily the norm. Usually it'd be the other way around. um,
Hmm.
and there are other examples with some of the other shows that I do like, I like with people and whatnot. Um, so um, I knew that people love the show, and I knew that there had to be something about it that people liked. And so from when we started the show to where I ended this show are two very different places. And thus, I would like to begin my segment titled Marshall Pulls a 180 while watching Witch from Mercury. So please hang on with me, because while I may not start it sounding like I'm really into it, we're going to get around to this. Trust me. um, so getting into, honestly, like, roughly, like, maybe 10, like, eight-ish episodes in, right? 8 to 9 is kind of maybe start where it gets in there, and 10 often is kind of, I think, where I look at it as like the crest, or I guess in this case it'd be the ditch, because you'd be going down and then up. So, like, this is the lowest part of the ditch, is around 8 or 9. um the And yeah, I at this point watching it and I'm just not that into it. I'm not feeling it the same way I think I had with some of the other shows, even up to this point. Now, some
Certainly.
of my main issues stemmed from the first thing. I was not super interested in the corporate kind of espionage angle that was kind of then getting mixed with high school antics, right? Like, I really wasn't wanting the series to be about like high school bullying, like, and a lot of the characters in the show that are like kind of mean to either Soletta or the Earthens, especially Soletta, was just kind of like felt like we just need the other characters and especially girls in this show to be mean to the Soletta because she's the main character and is from a different place. And I was just kind of like, that worked in Mean Girls for very different reasons, and so I'm not always on board when that's the baseline of conflict at the especially in a series. And my thought at this point is that this is kind of going to be the crux of the series, so I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want a whole series of this. So, and that carries through for a long time, that kind of high school antics mix, and then the background you're getting the corporate espionage part, right? It's kind of like these two parallel points that every now and then maybe they finally curve in a bit before they really touch. And look, it wasn't really sitting with me right how kind of also casual everybody in the school was, kind of about, it's like, yeah, we're piloting death machines, but like, trust me, we're just at school. Like, and again, this is
certainly.
after watching the prologue, where the whole reason they killed all these people was supposedly so that they wouldn't build death machines, and then everyone went off and started building death machines. So I'm just like, this is such an extra level of hypocrisy that I'm just like, bro. Like, but there were two characters that honestly through the beginning story that kind of really held me in, and that would be Guel and the first, or technically fourth, Alon clones stories. The Alon one I'll start with and be a little more brief. I just kind of found the nature of his untimely demise to be really sad, and it was in that I was just like, okay, there's some things coming on here. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. We're just obliterating these clones that supposedly fail us. All right. There's some juice here. There might be something to this, because this is potential plot development, right? Like, something might move forward from this idea, right? This concept could become a whole plot for them to discover that they're doing this and whatever. Because I have no idea, obviously, where things are going yet, right? Like, I'm taking guesses at what the hell the crux of the plot's gonna surround. Because Lord knows I would not have predicted how it went. But Guel, he was a whole thing, because obviously Soletta up to this point in the show kind of just is winning everything. But all of her issues generally stem from either being incredibly naive, and honestly, I was not annoyed specifically that she was just naive, but that she was kept naive, even when it was more detrimental to not only her, but even technically her mom's own plot line, or what their goals would have been. So it was kind of weird. But obviously then it was because of that initially, when we get into when they do the Gundam, like the promo, the company kind of calling her out, making it seem like she's on the spot, the mom kind of not being able to be there, and so then Mjolnir has to save her. That kind of fell flat on me, because I'm just kind of like, I feel bad for Suletta, but it's more in that way of like, girl, what the hell what are you even doing here? You know, like, how do you know nothing? Like, I'm just like, that was my thing. I'm just like, how are you up to this point and you've been given zero information? Why were you pushed into the deep end of the pool? So my issue is not specifically with Suletta, but the circumstance that Suletta has been written into, right? Okay, so I'll be honest. So the kind of whole thing ended up making the Gundam thing falling a little flat for me.
Okay, yeah.
But let's also be really clear. At no point, at any point in this, am I that into Prospera. I pretty much clock her for being up to no good from pretty much the get-go.
I mean, it's hard not to when she shows up and is immediately rocking a Char-esque helmet. As
true.
we have learned from watching other series, if somebody is wearing a Char-like helmet, then they are probably not doing good things.
But you know what? In Wing, it technically worked out, but
there's always an exception to the rule.
But he did end up he did get a little fucky in there. So I mean that it doesn't remove the stereotype. Yeah. So Guel, though, I will note then, was a different story. And first, all of this obviously stems from the fact that giving all of his problems come from that Vim Jetterk just sucks.
You don't say.
I mean, yeah. I mean, look, never be the guy that's weirdly into committing the genocide, usually never turning out to be a great guy. But he just like sucks at being even in his position.
He kind of just sucks at everything. It's one of those guys who is in a high position in a corporation that is clearly not very good at thinking ahead. And when they try to sort of act one step ahead of their competitors, they don't really have a full understanding of how to do it. And they kind of just fall back on, okay, but what if we do like an assassination attempt? Wouldn't that be cool?
Right.
Now, I know this didn't work last time, but hear me out.
No
what
way
if
that you'll use this information against me?
Never.
But,
not in a million years.
However, because he also just sucks at trying to not only get his own son on board with things or to make him better or him to improve his skills. Instead, because of this, though, we get one of the more fascinating characters of the show out of him. And though at this point I am like not crazy attached to anybody per se, because like Miorine still feels incredibly distant, like we haven't talked yet about the fact that obviously up to this point in the show, Suletta and Miorine are engaged because Suletta essentially won the first duel against Guel, and whoever is the dueling champion is the fiance to Miorine because her dad is apparently weird.
This series
not a normal
is fascinating because there have been multiple Gundam series that have had a focus on like duels and like fight clubs and things of that nature. G-Quux is a recent one that comes to mind that also has like a major aspect of it is these like fighting tournaments and competitions. This series is fascinating to me because right from the get-go, they establish that these duels that are being handled at the academy are used to handle matters of power, of business. There is an expectation that if you engage in a duel, you have to place bets on it. And like, there has to be like a prize, something that you value that you will lose or will have to do. And this whole concept is introduced that like, yeah, she will have to marry the holder, the person who is sort of at the top in terms of the duelists, and that originally was going to be Guel, and it just transfers over to Soletta when she beats him in the duel. And she treats it as a very matter-of-fact thing, but you can also, it's also very clear right away that, like, she resents the entire notion. What she cares about is not, necessarily following in her father's footsteps or obeying his wishes. She wants to get as far away from him as possible. Our literal introduction to her was her trying to escape. This whole duel thing, I think she is immediately recognizing it for how, like, insane it is, and for how much power it has, to the point where it is influencing the decisions that these, like, major companies are trying to make, because they are relying on, like, the results of these duels outcomes, as well as like Vim is really relying on, like, Guel and her actually forming a union. So the fact that he loses this duel and then loses the rights to marriage to her is, like, a big blow for him, and sort of starts Guel on this, like, downward trajectory. Like, right away, it just immediately is kind of confounding, like, how much pressure is being put on these, like, schoolyard fights.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of, like, meet me at 2:00 on the playground, be there,
by the bike
having
rack.
Like, extreme weight put behind it.
Yeah, and
it's,
I mean,
like, really crazy.
Granted, like, in the first year, they're like 17. So this is kind of like a college, if you will. But still, like, whether or not, like, whoever wins the BCS championship gets to marry my daughter is a little weird.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing, right? And, like, all of that has been absurd to me, and that's the thing. It's like, at this point, I haven't stuck with it. It hasn't stuck with me. However, when we get to Plant Coetta, everything changes. So it was cute to see leading up to Coetta, right? That, like, Earth House and Soletta were getting really involved, especially now that they're all employees of Gundam, and it's nice because they're trying to be medical. And that's, like, first of all, like, there's a point in the series that I actually found really entertaining when they were trying to figure this stuff out. And they essentially, like, the people in Earth House, or, like, the guys who are, like, the main two fighting about it, were kind of like, well, being in the medical sector is really profitable. Also, we are still at least helping people, so it's a win-win. It's just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, real. Anyway, look, nothing makes a Gundam show good like terrorism.
I was very curious because you had sent me a message saying a similar thing about how you weren't really feeling the first half of this, and then the terrorism elements get introduced and it, like, changed.
Right. And it wasn't
for you
explicitly that. I do want to make it clear. It was everything, though, that the real danger, the fact that, like, now there is a real danger present, that it made everybody else become like this is the point now where we finally get everyone starts showing their true colors. And that's the key here. So, like, I definitely also want to make it clear that I also clocked Shadiq's bad intentions from the get-go.
It's really not hard to know. Like,
no,
right away.
It felt like they wanted to make him appear like he could end up being kind of, because everybody it's like the thing, right? Everybody looks like a piece of shit. So someone's going to be the piece of shit that maybe you're willing to deal with the most. And it felt like they wanted you to think that he would be the one that you're willing to deal with. And I was like, nah, he's got some shit up his sleeve and I know it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But before the attack, right? I finally get a moment with Soletta that I truly can empathize with her on. And that's when they get to the ship. It's like she starts to have these feelings beforehand, but as she is on the ship, imposter syndrome rears its ugly head. And again, I have this thing that I can attach to, because watching her doubt why all her friends have her around is so very real. It's not this just, oh, I'm out of place. It's here's a real emotion and a real problem, and because it's not just thinking that, like, this thing is not just like thinking that people aren't your friends or that they're just portraying you. It's that you have, that they only have you around solely for something that you are offering to them, not necessarily benefiting them, but offering them.
Yes, it's not the traditional way that we think about imposter syndrome, where it's like, I myself am not worthy of the position I am. It's very much her completely doubting what that position is to begin with.
Yeah, the idea is that, like, you have put yourself in their lives rather than them accepting you. And that is there's a dissonance that's incredibly important, because
yes.
It's whether or not, like, you feel then that you are wanted. And it's so very real and so very emotional. But again, going into something that we finally get, then we finally get this real emotional tie as between Suletta and Miorine, because Miorine hears Suletta confiding all of this doubt and fear to her mom. And honestly, I give her a lot of shit in this show, but Prospera actually handles this conversation with Suletta very well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, this is good mom moment. This is the one she gets.
Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one. So, but like, Bjorn hears all of this, and like, my heart finally felt something, because, again, up to this point, the bride thing has basically just been a MacGuffin. And now it finally feels like there is something between them. There is a genuine careness between that there is an emotional attachment forming. It's not just, I need to keep bailing you out because I feel bad for you, or I need to bail you out because you just happen. I don't want anybody else to hold the spot. I want you here because I want you here. Right. And that was like, I finally felt that with this moment. Though, despite the fact that Mjorne absolutely almost gets herself fucking killed in this storage transport section that they shouldn't be flying in the middle of, but regardless, that's a digression. Okay, but then from this point, we get to the actual terrorist attack, right? And once again, we get to see Prosper showing how crazy manipulative she is with Suletta, because she just kind of uses the whole 2 steps forward, 1 step, back or whatever premise to like be like, see, it was okay that I killed these people. And now, granted, they were gonna kill them too, so this is self-defense. It's fine. But like,
it's justified, okay? It's totally justified.
But it was just the way of bringing that up in this sense, and not just being like self-defense, but like more trying to make her okay with the idea that killing people is okay sometimes, is the wild part. It was the way, right? It's the route that she took to get to it. Not just being like, it's kill or be killed, self-defense. It's, well, sometimes you just gotta be okay with killing a guy. I was just like, this is not what the fuck.
And Soletta's devotion to her mother becoming this like,
yes,
almost parasitic relationship of like full dependence on her, like abandoning her own ideas to the, almost, because she's so reliant on her mother for guidance, that she is able to just like step into this act seemingly so like nonchalantly
Yeah.
in a way that like quite understandably you know, terrifies Miorine. Like the look on her face, or Miorine, the look that is on her face as like Soletta's reaching out to her with like the blood like smeared on the hand.
Yeah, so she just pasted a human.
Yes.
Yeah, it's astounding. And you know, look, we get to the, obviously just before that, right? We get to the fight where the actual like Suletta is fighting the terrorist girls, who I love are just how they are just psychopaths. Like, yes, they have their reasons and stories, but in the end, also a number of them are just straight up insane. Like,
I didn't love that. I wish I loved that. I didn't love, like, this was getting to the point in the series where I was like, there's so many of these types of characters that have been introduced that maybe could have just been one character.
But
and they were boiling down to such a simple thing. I was like, yeah.
But that's the thing to me, is that what I like about it is everybody else is crazy or whatever, or like sadisticness, like all of that has been carefully got, you know, put behind this veil, has been guised by something. These girls are like, no, we are the front, we're the front line. We are we are the, like, we just go out there and we take care of this, because we have been driven so far off the deep end to this point that we're just gonna go for it. And you know, the thing about that I like is that it's more that it kind of just showcases again this realm of like, here's where Spatians have essentially pushed a number of earthen people where they're just going to be willing to do this. I get your point, and I think it's totally valid. But in this point, I looked at it as a breath of fresh air at this point in my watching, because there's no bullshit with it, right? Like, it's just, they're here to kill you, plain and simple. And I appreciated that, and at this point in the show, but at the same time, right, Suletta is learning and essentially having to fight and then end up killing, you know, someone. At the same time, we're now running this point where Guel sees everything that's happened, because he has run away from home at this point, and he has been working on the plant recently, and he tries to protect the ship and deal with these terrorists. However, Vim, his father, is an idiot, as we mentioned, and tries to fight him because for some reason, despite that there are Gundams fighting the ship, he looks at the normal mobile suit and is like, that must be a terrorist. Whatever. And so gets himself killed because he doesn't turn his comms on. And like, man, way to have your plan just blow up in your face because you were just that stupid. Literally.
But again, it is coming back to his weakness being how much he is relying on others while simultaneously not having enough forward thinking to understand them. And the way that it blows up in his face feels fairly appropriate, I would say.
Yes.
It's the type of it's a disaster that you can see coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
With him.
Yeah. But now we have a Guel traumatized because he now realizes he has killed his own father, and we begin one of the best character arcs in the whole show. And
yeah, you really.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah, you really came away from this series with like Guel as like my main guy.
Yes, for sure. I mean, like, this point is like I lock in here, right? Like, I'm like, okay, wait.
Yeah.
I think I see the sauce coming. Like this, I think that we're gonna be okay. Like, I think we're gonna get through this. Because look, one way or the other, I'm gonna finish the show. We're doing the podcast, we're planning the episode. I can't just give up, you know. And honestly, I maybe I rarely ever fully give up anyway. But unless it's like particularly just bad, which it wasn't. It was not that. I didn't think of it as that bad, but I was just not rating it highly in comparison up to this point. But now I'm so fascinated about how they deal with this attack. How does everybody recover? You know, Mjolnir now has to end up leading the Bennett group because and now there's just this like cat and mouse game with Grassley. So now we got intrigue, you know, and
they don't
sorry,
shy away from the like political and corporate espionage aspects. It's being dialed up even further.
Right.
As the like larger conflict between the Spacians and the Earthians that are rioting against them is like continuing to escalate and bubble.
Yeah, but like, and this is the type of way that maybe I kind of wanted it to be from the beginning. Where instead of it just being like this, oh, who's gonna be the one to get in the way? You know, it was just kind of like, now it's like, all right, like they don't necessarily know who it is, but like it is clear like how they're opposing each other now, right? Why they're opposing each other right now. Because there's also reasons now, deeper reasons.
Yeah.
And you know, because Grassley essentially, you know, specifically Shadiq, you know, has his ties to Earth, right? And amongst the girls that he works with, you know, and that he has working for him, they all have their ties. And so Guel going to Earth was such a good plot line because not only does he kind of really get to see in a way like what his father and the other corporations have kind of wrought for Earth, but you know, he sees just the general thing that war does, you know, and that this battle does, right? Because he has this little girl die in his arms in a mobile suit as they try to escape. You know, he actually at some point asks to be killed, you know, and it's like that's just so deep. And to see him fall that hard from where he starts in the show was so endearing and just so interesting.
I think Guel's storyline is one of this series' biggest strengths, but I think it also highlights one of its biggest weaknesses because it is such a like complete, you know, starting off in this kind of pauperish or this like high level position. You know, he's very haughty, very arrogant. Definitely sort of living off of like his family's established importance to then being like torn down over and over until he gets to the point, you know, where he's just at his lows, ends up on Earth, goes through all of this stuff with the children, experiencing all of this firsthand, and then coming back to like reclaim the company. All of that is great, but the issue is that in most cases, that would be its own series by itself, where Guel would be the main character, and this would be like the story that you are following him through his fall from grace and then kind of his return with a renounced sense of purpose and understanding for what's actually happening around him. And this is like one of several major threads that are going on at the same time in this series. And I personally felt like it wasn't getting enough room to fully breathe. Because of like this obligation to follow up on all these other threads. I'm going to be real with you. Most of what was going on with Shadiq, not only was I like seeing it coming early on, I wasn't that interested. And the way things played out, it kind of felt like he was, you know, he had kind of a clear goal that he was aiming for. And he was, you know, trying to manipulate things behind the scenes and was doing things here and doing things there. And then it kind of hit a point where it was like, I didn't care about him anymore. Like I just lost interest in what he was doing. And it felt like the series kind of did too. There's an important thing that he, you know, is a part of at the very end. Like he signs on, he approves like a very important thing for Mjolnir. But outside of that, I was left being like, man, he kind of was making a lot of trouble to then just not really go anywhere with it. And it frustrates me because it feels like the kind of thing that didn't need to be there when we already have these like other way more compelling stories like Wells that are also happening, and that we could have like focused more on or dedicated more episodes to, that aren't just, Shadiq's sort of generalized plotting and scheming to like take power and to take control of the Bennett group. Like, I don't know. It just frustrated me because I would be watching Gwell's scenes and I would keep being reminded, I'm like, this is such an interesting, compelling story to go through. Eventually, we're going to have to kick it over to Shadiq or somebody else here, and I'm not going to be as interested.
Yeah, I get that. But I think that's actually why I kind of appreciate that Shadiq did kind of just get tossed, because I think he got put up to being the antagonist that he needed to be. And then it didn't, because I do actually feel like his plot line was giving a lot of sustenance, because it to me, what it does is if anything, what it does is that it kind of showcases moreover why someone like Prospera does what she continues to do. And it continues to give her reasoning. So from this point though, right? Miorine, as we mentioned, leading the Bennett group. But as you also mentioned, Guel does end up returning back to his company, his father's company. And unfortunately, yes, this is, I would say, was kind of a low point after I locked in. And this is kind of what I agree with. Because they hatched this plan for like Miorine, because she kind of sees this writing on the wall about how Suletta is almost unhealthily attached to her mother. And, obviously she doesn't fully grasp why, but they make it so that Suletta loses a duel, that Guel becomes the keeper, and also loses Ariel.
Yes, and this is the other big part of it, because Suletta keeps referring to Ariel as part of her family.
Yeah.
She clearly has like this really deep bond with it that she herself also doesn't fully like understand why it is the way that it is. But like Miorine is seeing it as it is, which is that like her mother is influencing her and controlling her as a means to maintain control over the Ariel until she can achieve her master plan.
Right.
And so she recognizes it's like, it's not enough that we get her away from her mother's control. We also need to remove her from the Ariel, because the connection that's there between her and the mobile suit is the thing that all of these like major groups, these major players in this conflict, all of them have in common is that they want that. They want the Ariel, they want her, they want access to it because of what it's able to do.
Right. So, we get to this point because, like, obviously from this, because losing this causes Suletta to get, really sad and almost kind of introspective. We kind of get a couple of nice things though. Like it kind of almost deepens her bond with a number of the Earth House people. She we start to actually, Miorine starts to make good with kind of the effort. They go to Earth. They start to actually get to figure out everything with Grassley. Like everything's kind of coming to a head. And then, you know what? Prosper's just got to go ahead and ruin shit again. And, she blows up a bunch of shit on Earth, screws all this stuff up, goes to space. And so Miorine is just fucking ruined. And like, this helps me my look to Miorine, because again, we're getting this different struggle. We're getting this like, now you understand why. Like, I think she hadn't up to this point grasped fully why she couldn't trust Prospera, but it's like now she is. But then again, Suletta thinks suddenly, oh, she's gonna be able to get the Ariel back. They're nearby. I have access. I can go say hi. She gets into the aerial. She goes like, hey. But then, oh, wait, now we're learning. Oops. She's actually a clone of Aerie. And her mom is instead going to take Ariel to Quiet Zero. This whole space station thing that we don't need to describe right now.
Can I just say it? I find most of the stuff around Quiet Zero extremely weak. This is one of those episodes where you're gonna, if you're listening to it, you're gonna rewind back to the beginning where I said that I really liked this series and that I still liked it after rewatching it. And then you're gonna come back to now and be like, dude, what are you smoking? You keep saying that you find these elements not good. Hang on. Be patience. We'll get there. But this feels everything with the Quiet Zero and sort of the master plan of how this is going to work feels for me so derivative of a lot of other Gundam plots, to the point that it really, and it's not, in my personal opinion, it's not doing anything that makes it really stand out from the others. The whole thing of her like trying to get Aerial Gundam above a certain permit to the point where Aerial will be able to essentially pilot it herself and use it as a body instead of needing Suletta to pilot it. And the larger thing of like being able to control, all these other things with the permit control that she'll have. It's one of those types of things that can really just boil down to, I'm going to use the Gundam to become super powerful, and then I'm going to take over the space.
Yeah, I get that.
It's like, we're really doing this again, huh? And it just didn't land with me. So yeah, all the Quiet Zero stuff, I was just kind of like phasing in and out of consciousness on that.
Right. But like a big thing was like on top of that, the Earth Girls get terroristy again. But like it's obviously not just them, because like they were in this like lockdown with the 5th Elan clone. And on top of that, like Suletta sees more bad, right? She sees all the destruction, she sees the students that die, and she has to help them out. There's so much to it. And then now she is just, devastated. She is lost. But at this point, right, she has lost her mom. Her mom gave her up. Now, granted, I'm surprised she didn't just straight up kill her. But I guess she has some semblance of empathy left in her.
I think there's that, but then also that sense of like needing her somewhat. Like she still hasn't hit the point where Aerie can just like fully control the aerial.
Yeah, but her whole thing at this point was that she tells Suletta, "Go live your life. Me and Aerie are gonna go."
Yeah, because once this works, we won't actually need you, and we're just gonna let you go.
Yeah, but like they're letting her go now, basically, and so it's like, she has to get picked up with just floating in space with this oxygen tank, and it's like, they're unfortunately just a lot. And so now Miorine and Suletta separately are in these lowest points. But all right, just let me talk kind of through the Quiet Zero stuff, because
no, please,
obviously to me this is going to be like the whole thing of just like, we kind of mentioned, both of us, I think it's agreed. It's like the Quiet Zero to me, again, kind of a MacGuffin thing. It's just, here's a big thing, here's a big bad, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's not the part that matters, right? Quiet Zero itself does not matter. Suletta and Miorine, we have to start this by them making up. Suletta and Guel duel one last time, but in this time it's a fencing match.
Yes. I wanted to really give this its due, because I simultaneously was like, right, they do the fencing thing because it's like it's sort of representing the final duel between Char and Amuro, where they similarly were like fencing.
Yes.
carries, I personally feel like, none of the weight that had
No,
whatsoever.
absolutely not. It was a means to an end.
Yeah.
But it really was a means to an end, and that's why it's like I don't hold it in a lot of regard either.
Yeah.
But what is a great parallel is when Suletta and Mjolnir talk, because now we are at this point, like before, where Mjolnir had to bring Suletta forward to carry her back into reality, into the togetherness. Now it is Suletta who has to do it for Mjolnir. And
Yes.
that is where that's what's key. And like it's this reaffirming of what like their togetherness is, and that they truly care about each other. And I mean, there's a point before this in that which we'll probably bring up a little bit later when we talk about it, but like so, Soletta and Guel like kind of talk about at some point earlier in the series, just a bit before this, where is she's kind of he kind of tries to drop like a little thing of like do you think me and you have a chance? And she's just kind of like no, or and like this is the affirmation of that, right? Like of just like Soletta loves and cares about Mjolnir, and like this shows that because it's not just about saying like, oh, I care about you. It's more about just like being there for them, bringing them up, you know. um and now she's doing this, and the way she talks to her is not just by blindly puppeting Prospera's ideas, but now it's from her own learned experience, right? From watching classmates die, from watching her school be torn up, and they know that there's a way to stop this and that they have to do it. So again, Quiet Zero itself, MacGuffin, but like this is where some of the emotions during this fight start to get to me. So first of all, this is a great point for me to bring up, that these voice actors, all of them, are so fucking good. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. The voice acting.
These performances,
we both, I think, watched the English dub on this one.
Yeah, and these performances are so top tier.
Yep.
And obviously, like I haven't really talked about the Elan clone and the Noria subplot, but like that was beautiful in so many ways. But in this case, right, there's kind of two segments of the fight where Suletta is trying to talk with Eri and trying to plead to both her and her mother that they can be a family, that they don't need to do this. And some of it gets through with Eri because when a giant laser beam from our really good friends in what was the company name again, the Pale Technologies group, shoots at Quiet Zero, Eri defends it because she does want to protect, well, really everyone in her, that like, but especially her mom. However, it is coming back with Eri into a Quiet Zero to tell her mom that she doesn't need to do this, but she also said she's not gonna just follow what she asked for. She's not gonna comply with her, but that they are going to deal with it. And Bjorn does the whole thing where she kind of sells the company off, to try to get them to stop firing the gun. That doesn't end up working. So what is the number one thing she can do? Well, she essentially realizes the one thing that she can do, which is kind of what Ground Zero or Quiet Zero kind of did, which was act as this giant EMP. So she reaches I think level 8 data storm is what it was called. And it not only, it just like completely deactivates the gun, but then it also ends up causing Quiet Zero to dissolve. Clearly they saw the writing on the wall because there's an escape pod scene just before this. but I'm going to tell you that like in this fight, when like Eri and Suletta are kind of hashing it out, I'm getting a little welled up.
Yeah.
Because it's just I don't know, it's just it was a really beautiful scene to me, just because like the reaching level 8, the whole kind of rainbow effect, it was just artistically, I thought, very beautiful looking. And then like this pleading with her sister, and I'm just like I'm just immersed in the beauty of the scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and then we get to the dissolving of all the Gundams in Quiet Zero after it is over. It's kind of the opposite almost, where the Gundams have used all of their powers, but at the expense to themselves rather than the other way around. Um, but
Which ties all the way back into the prologue.
Yeah.
When they were talking about, the idea that like only people should kill people, Gundams and tools shouldn't be what's responsible. Like that whole speech that Delling Rembrandt has when he's, initially declaring that they're going to deny all Gundams. I think that's definitely kind of coming back at the very end there, with having the end result be that the Gundams are kind of disintegrated away.
Right. But when Mjolnir goes to Suletta, they reunite. We're given this little bait and switch. But like, by the time that I want you to know, like, by the time that Suletta wakes up, I'm fucking bawling, dude.
Really? Okay.
I like it. I was ugly crying at this point during these scenes. I can't tell you now, like, in trying to look at so many of these things objectively or whatever. It was just in that moment, of watching the last two episodes, where I just was so emotionally invested in it. I mean, I watched the last 5 episodes super late. Like, I couldn't go to sleep. I had to watch them. Like, I just had to. And I was bawling. I could not contain myself. I just felt so much attachment and just so much joy. And I didn't stop until the credits roll. So, and that was it. It just was. There was so much in this show for whatever reason. At the first watch, I just wasn't seeing, but I just felt like I had gone through so much of those emotions and like differences, that I felt like it all ended up coming together in such this kind of, I don't know. I felt like ended up coming together in a beautiful way. And then, when we get through it and seeing them, like, yes, they acknowledge that the ending isn't perfect, but I don't know, just seeing these two sit together in a field, you know, they've gone and gotten married in the 3 years since the fight.
Mm-hmm.
I just The show is beautiful, man. And like, I mean, just seeing the effect of the Data Storm 8 made me feel that. But every character I felt like just got such great endings. It's like, while there's technically an opening for a sequel, I don't think I want it. Um, I felt like it was great where it landed. Um, but there's so much other things about how hard I 180 on this show. Um, but like, I don't know. To me, dude, this is the best one. To me, this has been the best one.
Wow.
I like seriously, like if I keep getting emotional every time I watch parts of this show again. Like this doesn't happen to me. I don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one of the last anime I can remember like crying about was Code Geass. And like that was at this point almost nearly over a decade ago. You know, like I'm able to detach myself so much, and I just couldn't. I still can't. This show touched me in such a great way that I just can't. I can't do it in a way that is ultimately objective, right? Because it it just turned for me in all the right ways that just made me love it.
I wanted to follow up on your feelings there about the moments. Let me actually make sure I've got the, the terminology right. Because I was thinking, as you were describing that, it was making me think a lot about, where is it? Where is it? There's a specific term for it. I'm going to check. Sorry. There's like I got to get the term right on this. The name they give in this particular series for the sort of otherworldly connection that they go into. There's a specific term that they use for it this time around.
Oh,
it's where they're able to see Aerie.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they've generally just referred to like all that parts of it, like, or like that essentially like how they've been connected to the data storm, but
the data storm. That's what I was trying to.
Yeah. Okay.
Was the data storm. So following up on that, it sounds like we have had various versions of this. There was like the new type connections and the new type flashes between like Lala and Amuro and Char in the original. When we did G-Quux had the Kira Kira, if you recall, was also this similar like new type connection that put them into this like space between spaces, this ethereal area where they were able to see people.
Yeah.
And this is its own version of that. And I found that for me personally, it's not as beautiful as the Kira Kira in terms of just like the sheer spectacle of it. But I agree with you that I think it is utilized in this series better than a lot of the other series handle that. They clearly, instead of having it just kind of be a thing that's tacked on later, it's present throughout the whole series. And the storm really feels like it's serving a bigger purpose by having it be so strongly connected to Aerie being able to appear like multiple times throughout. And then also having it be part of the permet and like the Gundam aerial being able to like expand out its capabilities by increasing the size of that storm and the range of it. Gives it this like great utility in addition to what I think is often the bigger purpose that it serves, which is this kind of analogous nature to the afterlife. That has been kind of the common thing where it represents this like connection between souls as opposed to just between people, but also a means for us to connect with people that are no longer alive. And I think The Witch from Mercury like handles this better than most of the other series have done it. To this day, I think it's like one of my favorite interpretations of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of like your consciousness kind of be putting into like an AI or like a computer sphere. Kind of like the Voton in 40K, where like, you know, they're like all of their wisdom and knowledge, like basically their soul is uploaded into the Voton. It almost kind of feels like that a little bit, but I think the way that it was just done here was so, yeah, like I said, I mean, it was just so, like, it didn't feel like, it didn't become so pervasive to it though, like to the series, where like it just became about that, because like half of G-Quix is just about the Kira Kira and the way that they interact with it. You know, here it was more about this mystery and how does this data storm really affect people, and how can they interact with it. And then it's when it starts interacting back that it's kind of suddenly like, oh, okay. Um, so yeah, it was really cool. I really like that.
Can I, from this point on, just kind of go off?
Sure. Go off, King.
So, this being my second viewing of the series, you've heard me say throughout this episode the things that I consider to be like flawed with it. I think the biggest flaws are kind of how much it's trying to do at once. I think if you sit down with it and genuinely try to ask yourself, what is this series about? It is extremely difficult to narrow it down to one thing. And that's not inherently bad, but for Witch from Mercury in general, it really feels like they're trying to do too much, too fast, to the point that it makes it like really difficult to kind of keep tabs on everything that's happening. And for me, at least, it like reduces some of the impact. Like I will admit that I did not feel the same emotional impact that you did. I love that you had such a like an emotional connection to this series. And it's the kind of thing where on paper I should theoretically feel the same way. I want to go back and touch on a few of these other characters because I was so critical of Shadiq. I want to emphasize that, like, for example, Nika Nanora is maybe one of my favorite characters in the entire series. I think when we're talking about the relationship between the Spacians and the Earthians and having somebody that kind of represents that conflict, I feel like Nika perfectly fills that role. We talked earlier on about the whole thing with like Soletta kind of being bullied. Yeah. Because she's different. You know, she shows up, she is from somewhere else, she is different. And then they really are hammering that in, I think, with Nika and her relationship because she is from Earth. I felt like with Nika, the themes of that kind of isolation and that separation are made much more manifest and they work a lot better. I really appreciated why she sided with Shadiq and helped him in his plans.
Right. Well,
I didn't come away from it with that feeling of like, oh, she didn't understand what she was doing. You know, she should have been smarter to realize it's like, no. Like, I fully appreciate her thinking for why she became a part of that. And I thought it was interesting to see her be one of the ones that had to like face real consequences over this to the point of being like jailed.
Yep.
And essentially kind of having to start over. I adore Choo Choo. Choo Choo is amazing.
Choo Choo has so much appreciation from me in this series because like, again, she is just another character that has real growth. like, because yeah, her whole bit is how she hates the Spatians, you know, and a lot of that is kind of from this like this discrimination that comes from being an earthen amongst the Spatians. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, a big thing about that is that Choo Choo grows from that and with that,
Yes.
where she is seeing and engaging the fact that, when she watches her classmates die and when Earthens are attacking, she doesn't just join them, she is like, this is wrong. This is not what I came to this school to create a better life for us. And this is the opposite. This is going to do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, while inherently a hothead, very surprisingly emotionally mature. And I love that for her.
Mm-hmm. I do want to touch on Elon Saris.
Alon
Karis, I think is
a
Karis,
guy.
The last name.
Good old Alon.
Fascinating thing.
And
Alon
his
Karis.
multiple clones.
Yes. Well, that I've got a big thing for that. But like Alon Karis himself, I think this is the type of character where if I put them alone in a box, they're not entirely compelling. They're more interesting when you look at their involvement in the grand scheme of things. Because Alon himself, like, by nature of these clones, right? Like, a lot of the times that theoretically the cast is interacting with him, they're actually interacting with one of these replicants. And Alon himself is this sort of person who is like above it all for the most part. And it results in this interesting thing where you're kind of not entirely sure if you have an understanding of him, even after the series is over. There was definitely a part of me that wondered if somehow this still wasn't the actual Alon. Like it was also another clone that we were being, because that's kind of the thing with clones is like once you introduce that concept, it's like, well, now any version of this person, it's the thing discussion, John Carpenter's The Thing, where it's like, all right, now any of these people could be the Thing. We no longer have that like comfort or the security of like, this person is definitely who they say they are. But the whole thing with Alon and his clones was really fascinating to me, because I think you could quite easily take that as like the actions of his clones become kind of meaningless. Especially number 4, who eventually gets incinerated right after they sing happy birthday to themselves.
Yep. To the data storm.
But I think this ends up being part of the major takeaways that I had with this series. Alon and Gwell, both at various points, again, though we can argue this is Alon's, for the sake of this discussion, I'm including Alon's clones when I say Alon. But like Alon and Gwell have both at different points propositioned Suletta in terms of having a romantic interest in her, flirting with her, wanting to become her partner. And like Gwell especially is very like it's very funny in the moment when he just straight up like proposes to Suletta when it's like so soon after they've met.
Because he beat her.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things that gets talked about. Sorry?
I said he beat her. I meant she beat him.
Yeah, she beat him. Yeah. One of the big things that gets talked about with this series is the relationship, as you were talking about, between Soletta and Miorine. It's obviously a major focal point for the series itself, but it is also a big part of what made the series so celebrated after the fact.
Yeah.
Obviously, when this came out, I was no different. I was extremely into this aspect, the relationship between the two that was clearly more than just like two friends. You know, this wasn't a like they were roommates situation.
Yeah.
It was two people that were, you know, obviously very different from each other, learning to understand each other, learning to trust each other, and definitely falling for each other. But obviously a lot has been said about their union and the fact that, you know, at the end of the series, they clearly have the wedding rings.
Yes. Called a sister-in-law, you know.
When we go back to literally the end of like the first episode of the series, she wins that duel, which means that, you know, Soletta now would be marrying Miorine. And Miorine is very upfront about like, you know, okay, so you come from Mercury. Clearly it's the more conservative line of thinking there. Gender is not important for us. Like I don't care about gender when it comes to who I am going to marry. I think it's easy to look at that moment as like, well, she doesn't care regardless because what she really cares about is getting to Earth. She's not invested in being married to anyone. So why would she care? You know, why would she be concerned with like it specifically needing to be a guy?
Right. But what's important is no one else cares either.
Yes. The thing that's important is that it is not made to be made out to be like, well, this is a sinful thing. This is also a curse, you know, the fact that these two want to be together. What I took away with this second viewing that I think is really important is that I think this series isn't giving us a story that is about the advent of a queer sapphic relationship so much as it is speaking on heteronormative behavior that is taught through generations and also exists outside of just the context of relationships themselves. And what I mean by that is that I think about the whole idea of her having to marry the handler to begin with. The idea that like Vim sets up this thing of like, she's going to marry my son because my son is the handler. And then that's going to be good for our business relationship. And then
Delling is on board with this.
Yes. And it makes me think about businesses and corporations in our world and the ways that they interact with LGBT situations, where more often than not, the way that they will sort of handle that is based on what is going to kind of keep us in a position where we are still able to be profitable, that is not going to put us in like a controversial light. And that results in a lot of like flip-flopping that can happen where like some companies will be like very outwardly supportive of LGBT communities and others will be like, nope, we're not about that. You know, we want to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes with the people that, you know, engage with our company. So no, thank you. I think what this series is doing is that is one of several examples where it is actually engaging with the heteronormative standards that exist through business, through communication, through religion, through classism, class roles. Everything in this story that is, you know, tying into like the ostracization of a certain people. all the way up to the concept itself of the witch from Mercury. People will occasionally look at something like the Salem witch trials, and they will point to that as being another example of a time where queer people were, punished and like sought out and ostracized from their communities. Generally, what was happening there was that you were seeing a lot of disputes over land, and you were also seeing a Puritan enforcement of the idea that women are inferior to men, which there is a long history of that, but also that women, like men and women, are equal in their ability to sin, but that women were more susceptible to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
This series talks a lot about, they use the term like a curse. They speak of like the relationship that the pilots and the Gundams have with each other as a curse, because it is the literal like life that is being taken away from them by the Gundam. But everything else that's at play, the contract disputes, the trying to set up these businesses, all the corporate oversight, the military use of technology, the medical use of technology, that is all being wrapped up into this very same idea of the ostracization of another people. And I think it like goes far beyond just the wedding and the union between Suletta and Miorine, to the point where one of the big things that gets talked about with this series is that Bandai Namco later on released this kind of statement where they were saying that the relationship between these two was up for interpretation. And obviously people took that as like a really, them denying what is like a central theme and is like very clearly obvious. It's like they have a relationship, they are married. And it felt like them kind of downplaying it. And my honest takeaway from this is that Bandai Namco can make that statement, and I think there can be some truth to that they don't show you the wedding, they don't embrace, there's not like physical forms of affection shown, they don't say I love you. There's a lot of ways in a literal sense that you can take Bandai Namco's statement and be like, yeah, that is true, it is up to interpretation because they didn't explicitly, show us in the ways that we would expect. But I think the entire series is just a study on the sort of the heteronormative expectations that come into play with all aspects of society, not just relationships themselves. I think it's everywhere. And with the witches and the idea of like the curse, it is not necessarily about the fact that some witches may have been women or may have been queer women, or the people accused to be witches, I should say. And the fact that like, most of the characters in this series are women. Like this is a very women-led series. I think it is trying to go for a much broader approach that I feel will continue to age better and better over time as people revisit this series. And it becomes less about the specific union between the two main characters and more about the idea of corporations interfering at every level, that they would have any kind of stake in a marriage, in a union, between two people, regardless of their gender. The concept of cloning, I think, is a huge thematic push in terms of a queer reading, because it is building on the idea of queer couples, same-sex couples, not being able to biologically produce a child together.
Oh, sure.
That was a huge thing with Elan Karis and with his clones, the whole thing with the birthday cake and the singing of the happy birthday and the idea of like, do you even have a birthday?
Mm-hmm.
For heteronormative couples who have children, of course they do. Obviously. It's not a question unless you are looking at it from the lens of a relationship that produces a child that was not actually, created through sexual intercourse, that may have been like through adoption or, other means. And that extends to Eri and to Elon, and goes outside of just the relationship between Suletta and Miorine. Suletta is also a replica child. And the thing of her being able to find love isn't just finding love with another woman. It's being recognized as capable of love, even though she, her origins do not come from like the heterosexual standard that would be expected. All that to say that there's a lot more than just the wedding rings going on when it comes to reading this as like a queer text.
Yeah, and I mean, you really could always end up looking at, the reality of like the potential. I mean, right, and it would be apt, right? Like for the way that the meanings of this series, the deeper meanings of this series, like it would be apt for them to face societal and corporate pressure to put out that statement, right?
Yes.
Because, while there's plenty of, Yuri and like there's plenty of like yaoi, or at least if anything kind of insinuated shows and books out there that have popularity, they aren't necessarily always treated in the way that feels the most realistic.
Yes.
And especially now you have that type of representation in this show where it's far more realistically shown in the sense of not being like the relationship itself is a real relationship. It isn't the point of comedic effect. It's not the punchline. And it being such a popular series in Gundam that they probably see more of a potential backlash for it, especially in the inherently more socially conservative state that Japan still is, unfortunately.
Definitely.
So the one of the key differences though with Elan to Suletta is a replicant, but Elan often is actually there were a person. They have been enhanced to take his face.
Mm-hmm.
But the origins of, they reference like taking his face, but the origins of them is very unknown.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of very much to a point,
Yeah. It's like they seemingly carry only this sort of memory of being approached with the birthday cake, but you see how like between enhanced person number 4 and number 5, like the differences in personality that are happening where they're kind of evolving into their own people and their own personalities. That make me question like who really is the original Elan, if what we have to go off of is like his brief appearances and then the way that like 4 and 5 behave. Like how much of that is something they're inheriting from the enhancement process and how much of it is something that was already in them.
Yeah, because 5 acts more like the quote unquote original Elan, but the way he does engage with Noria is much different compared to how the normal Alon interacts with anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are probably an endless number of, I mean, you put it as it's negative. I don't know. To me, I actually really appreciated that there was a lot to attach to, because it was the opposite effect to me then about what I felt like I got with G-Quux, where it was so short, but even then it felt like they couldn't pack in enough, and that like there was always something missing about characters, and we just kind of figured if there was 12 more episodes we could get that. Well, to me then it was kind of like in this show I looked at it as like, well, I got the 12 more episodes, that was kind of my outlook to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why like I didn't get hit on some of those things as much, and to me honestly I almost kind of looked at them as strengths, that there was so much for me to look at, that I felt like there was a whole world. There wasn't just a Goel. There wasn't just, the Jetter group, there wasn't just, the school. There was a whole universe. And I think I appreciated that a lot. Because then I got to have two stories. To me, this was the equivalent of the holy shit, 2 cakes.
Yeah. I get you.
And that's what I think made it so good, because I mean, everybody had something for me to look at. I didn't have to not think that somebody wasn't important, that somebody didn't matter. Somebody had something for me to look at. I mean, like we had Martin, a character that probably for most of this year I wouldn't have really given a damn about. And then
Martin is my goat. He did nothing wrong. Even when he snitched, he was doing it with intention. The dude was worried.
Correct. No, he was totally valid. But you know what? Then it was through him that then, we saw him deal with Cecilia, who was a bitch, but you know what? She was the best bitch.
I feel like we're fully agreed.
So good.
The character output of this series is genuinely one of the strongest in the Gundam franchise.
Yeah,
I truly feel that like one of the strongest aspects of this entire series is its characters. I think there are a lot of characters. There are admittedly some that I feel like could have been like consolidated together, but like most of our major characters that we have are just like incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I just I just like I definitely understood your points, and there's probably plenty of times where I could probably look at a number of these periods and be like, and like rewatch it again and see like, yeah, this could have been better. Yeah, this probably wasn't the best route. This, that. To me, what matters is kind of how I felt watching it the first time, and just how it kind of like, and how it awoke something.
Yeah. And that's great.
It evoked such an emotional response that I have just not done before, that I really can't put it past that,
No, I love that this series struck such a chord with you. It feels like a series that it should be the same thing for me. Like it should be like a deeply emotional, affecting thing. Maybe there will be a time where I'll watch it again, and something about it will really deeply connect with me in that way. but it's genuinely awesome to hear, especially when like the context that I was working with at first was that, you know, you weren't really feeling a lot of what was going on in that first section, where it's a lot more focused on the school itself. That you would get to this point, that it would build up to this point, is like fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was special for me, and really nothing will take. Really, there isn't anything that would take that away. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple more things I want to touch on real quick before we wrap up.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to talk about the tomatoes. I just want to say,
oh yeah,
something that I do genuinely love from this series is the importance that is placed upon the tomatoes.
Yes.
When talking about generational impact, when talking about like things being passed down, because one of the major themes you could take from this is a parent having to cope with the loss of their family and of their child, and how you handle trying to protect your children and also trying to pass down information to them. The tomato being something that is deeply important, that it's like, you know, this very specific strain that was developed by Miorene's mother, and that she is so willing to immediately like offer it to Soletta before, you know, they've really established their relationship. It's this very clear symbol of like, it's her heart, it's her willingness to kind of like allow others in, you know, when she lets other people like work in the tomato garden and be more hands-on and be more involved. Like that garden in itself is like very representative, I feel like, of the personal. It represents her, and her allowing Soletta and others into it is very much a reflection of her allowing others in and being more open and connected with them. Having the kind of the back door that her mother had placed into the system be based on like the genetic strain of those tomatoes,
yeah,
was a really fun kind of payoff for that connection there. I want to get back to the witch thing. You know, why do you call this The Witch from Mercury? Why do you put all these witch themes into it? So
because witches are cool.
Witches are cool, first and foremost. But there's a whole lot going on with not just witches, but also witch hunts and the idea of like curses, and Soletta being special because she is seemingly able to lift the curse, in this case, the connection, the health issues that are caused by like connecting with the Gundams. Another interesting thing is the names given to these characters. So I don't know how much you have brushed up on your Shakespeare.
Been a minute.
But having the Gundam be named Ariel with an A, and having Soletta's mother be named Prospera with an A, did not sneak past me that this was very clearly in reference to Prospero and Ariel from Shakespeare's The Tempest. There is another character in The Tempest, a servant of Prospero, that goes by the name of Caliban.
Oh.
And Caliban, as we all know, all of us who have studied Shakespeare, is the son of the sea witch Sycorax.
I thought it was the world the Dark Angels were from.
You would think that, wouldn't you? In Mobile Suit Gundam The Witch from Mercury, we are briefly allowed the glory of seeing the mobile suit Caliburn. Or Calibarn, yes. I should say. This is important.
Yes, Calibarn.
Calibarn. And it literally has a witch's broom, which is cool. but it is also the mobile suit that Suletta uses to effectively carry out the events that end the quote-unquote curse. And also Calibarn is clearly this sort of portmanteau of not only Caliban, the character, the son of a witch, but also Excalibur, the mythical sword of King Arthur. Which, as we all know, not only was it thought to be possessing of like magical abilities, but wielding Excalibur was also what gave you like sovereignty and rulership over Britain. It's part of what like establishes Arthur as king. And Excalibur has had many names throughout history. As we all know, it is very old. If we go all the way back to early Welsh history, to the Bretons, they used the name Cladfolk. And if we go back to like ancient French, they used the name Caliburn. And from there, it eventually became Excalibur in our more modern vernacular. But it is clear that like the mobile suit Calibarn is meant to represent this connection to the witch, but also it is a connection to this magical source of power and this representation of sovereignty, her position as the holder. It is a tie into the societal impact that Suletta will have as she goes to Earth and starts on her own path. I think it's very interesting for them to use these names in particular. Prospero is the rightful Duke of Milan. Again, we're going back to like these titles, these positions in government, but was also a magician with powers. And Prospero, one of the things that Prospero does in The Tempest is he manipulates his daughter Miranda into a heterosexual relationship with Ferdinand, which also very much ties into the events of The Witch from Mercury, going back to having Miorine be in this kind of arranged marriage situation with whoever is the holder.
Miorine.
I think I've pronounced it 10 different ways during the course of this episode.
I mean how close that is to Miranda.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to know more directly from the creators as far as like why they pulled from these elements. But it really is clear that like they were looking at these like very deep, very old historical class positions in society and the ways that like magic and witches were integrated into that and feared by the people that were in power. And all of that comes back to that speech that Delling gives, where he is talking about the mobile suits and their decision that they are going to like deny the Gundams. And he says, I've come to one conclusion. Weapons should only exist to kill people. There should be no excuses for this. Once someone holds in their hands a tool meant purely for killing, they have to bear the sin that comes with it. But the mobile suits of Vanadis and Ox Earth are different. Not only do they take the lives of their opponents, but of their operators as well. This is not a tool, it is a curse. The punishment for taking a life should be imposed upon us by humans and not machines. People must kill or be killed by people. I believe that's the minimum courtesy in the foolish act of war. When we pull the trigger ourselves, we bear the burden of the life we're taking and of a sin we can never atone for. In war or any form of murder, that's how it has to be. And our cathedra shall deny all Gundams. You can literally just take the word Gundam out of there and replace it with witch. You can take the word witch out of there and replace it with non-Puritan people, heretical people, people who are not involved in the same belief or considered to be part of that same society. If you ask me what the witch from Mercury represents, I think it is about that ostracization I referred to earlier, and really just comes down to Soletta being a sort of King Arthur figure, but in a way that we wouldn't easily recognize, who takes on the tool that is supposed to be banished or hard to achieve and uses it to repel the curse, and takes on this sort of higher position as a result of it. I think, all things considered, this is kind of just a retelling of ancient Arthurian legend and ancient stories about witches, brought to the modern era through a sci-fi context and lens.
That's a very interesting point to bring up with that. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add with that because it's not Arthurian legends, especially not my forte or in place of expertise. But I mean, yeah, pressing Denning's speech is, I think, really is like a great point because it is so transferable, you know?
Mm-hmm. We've had to talk about war because of it being such a big part of what Tomino's original intentions were with the Mobile Suit Gundam series. Mm-hmm. When rewatching this, I was like rethinking how much of it is about war, because there's definitely a lot of times where you kind of get the sense of like, this feels less about war and its impact and more about like, schoolyard antics. And it's so very focused on like the characters at the university, that it feels like it's kind of getting lost in the sauce. But right. I think
especially at the start,
especially in that kind of first half. But I think it kind of pulls through with this larger message of the like 20 other messages that we've, discussed already, where it is still manages to be about war, but it's genuinely giving us a different perspective on it. And I think that makes it like extremely valuable as a series, among the Gundam series. Even if I have personal flaws with it, the thing I take away from it that I think is extremely valuable is that it is actually giving us a proper new perspective, and admittedly does that by pulling from like really ancient contexts.
Yeah.
I think you came away really having a deep emotional connection with this series. And I think what happened for me is that I came away with a deep appreciation for it on kind of more of like a literary or a thematic level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I especially I think part of why I also felt so interested was just, yeah, like this, basically this, basically this I don't know, kind of just like the way that it has created, or like it speaks to, I mean, just discrimination in general, the pure, just like kind of corporate animosity, but like how it almost can perpetuate all of those discriminations from a profit, because there is because competition is good, and therefore by creating an enemy, you have also then ended up creating a benefit to yourself.
You've
and
created an opportunity.
Yeah. And thus you've also, that's why you see so much hypocrisy. And it's so good, I think, at showcasing that I think that's where like one of the things that I really garnered interest to me in that as well.
Does this now surpass Wing for you?
Oh yeah, no, this is number one for me now.
That's crazy.
Number one. Wing was really good, and I really enjoyed. I still really enjoyed Seed, but those were all, and like I've over time honestly even gotten a lot of deep appreciation for the story that exists in 0079.
Yeah.
Like just the 1 year war, especially as a series or in like a storyline, but then just also like like all the extra things that are in the 0079 series that just like I hadn't even thought about the first time, and then going back and seeing parts of it that I'm like, oh my god, like right, that's a thing, like that happened. I forgot about it, and I just didn't draw that connection. I'm like, there's so many things that are easy to miss, but none of it. I mean, none of it just gave me this same connection, like. Because in the end of the day, that's because at the end of the day, that's just kind of what it amounts to, is that we connect with these shows, we enjoy these shows, often stemming from what type of emotional connection we can garner with its characters and with its story. And the way that this has done it to me has just shot it all the way to the top.
There you go.
That's often why it's often why I give reviews such, grains of salt type like reactions, because I'll never truly ever believe that like the objective ways of looking at things,
Oh yeah,
like that's movie's a great example of this, of like, whether or not a movie, like a film, is Oscar worthy, or like whether or not it needs to be, like, a great example is always like, I don't need Star Wars to win an Oscar. I need Star Wars to make me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a defense I've had for it for a long time. And now granted, it hasn't made me feel good lately, but that's a different story entirely. The big thing always just ended up being I didn't need it to check boxes. I needed it to make me feel a certain way. And so that's kind of why it's like, I think any problems people have with this series are valid and they're interesting, and I'd love to hear them, and I love to listen to your theories and critiques of it, but also it will still just be the best to me so far. But yeah, other than that, I think we're all good.
Phew.
I know. It was a long one.
This is I'm trying to recall if we had another series where we had so much to, like, even with 0079 taking place over the course of like 2 episodes, I don't know that we had as much soul to bear when it came to actually talking about it. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, that is Mobile Suit Gundam The Witch from Mercury.
Yes.
Y'all, if for some reason you listen to all that and you haven't watched it yet, what are you doing, first of all?
Yeah.
And second of all, go watch it yourself. At the time of this recording, it's on YouTube, just available through the Gundam International channel. Do yourself a solid. Even with my, some of the things that I don't love about it personally, this is still like an easy top 5 for me. And as you can tell, even if I'm not a huge fan of its pacing or like how much it's trying to do, I clearly still have a lot to say about the themes that are being presented, and I appreciate a lot of that about it, and I love the characters. And Marshall, you clearly love this series for its characters and the connections between them as well. We barely even talked about the mobile suits themselves outside of like Ariel and Calibarn.
But
the
they ended up
duels
really
like we didn't even touch on.
Yeah.
There's so much amazing like fight scenes and stuff that are happening in this as well for people who just want to see the giant robots smash against each other.
Right.
There is a lot there, and you could take that as a negative, but it could also just as easily be seen as a positive. I feel like there is something here for pretty much everyone who is into Gundam. They will be able to find it. But yeah, that's that series. I think we can easily call it there. Otherwise, we're threatening to do a whole nother episode on this if we don't cut ourselves short. So thank you all for listening. As always, thank you for listening and for watching. Please let us know how you feel about The Witch from Mercury. Let us know if you had, a emotional attachment to it, if you loved it, if you didn't like it, if you thought that my crazy rants about Arthurian legend were way off base. Let us know how you felt about it. And we will be back eventually talking about more Gundam, maybe even some other stuff. And we'll most definitely be back talking about more Warhammer here on the Heretic Hammer podcast. Marshall, anything else you wanted to leave off with here?
No, we're rearing up for more Armageddon. We got some subtopics to introduce ourselves before we get to it, but it's coming. We're working on it. So until then, we'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye.